Welcome to part 4 of Cliffhanger. Hey, we have been talking about this idea that you are attracted, and I'm attracted to the drama in other people's lives, but we kind of resist it in our own. Another way to think about it is simply by thinking about it this way. It is much more interesting to see the drama than to be the drama. And what I want to talk about this week as we wrap up this series is all the reasons why you don't want to be the drama. Okay, and you probably got 1,000. You probably have all these things you're going to do with your life, and some of you, you're not a Christian. You're just exploring it. You're not 100% sure. But here's what you're afraid of. You're afraid God is going to take away your freedom. It's like, if I give my life to Christ, if I give my life to God, then what I'm going to give up is I'm going to give up like my freedom, my ability to make my own decisions. Some of you who are Christians, you're like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I kind of like, if there's that eternity thing, I want to be in on that. But I don't really want to surrender my life to God like fully, like I'm a Christian, okay? But like I don't want to give him every part of my life because that could make some difference. It means that he could actually ruin what I have planned for my life. Like what if my life gets more tumultuous as a result of following God? So here's what I'm going to do, okay? I'm going to watch the message. I'm going to be part of the church. I'll even join a small group. I'll read my Bible and pray, but I'm not going to be that serious about God actually getting involved with my life, because if God gets involved in my life, well, then I kind of lose control, don't I? So I'd rather, and underneath that is this idea that your plan for your life is better than God's plan for your life. And I know, if you've been around in the church for a while, you're like, well, that's not true. But yeah, most of us live like it is. And we all get plans for our lives, right? We grew up in a culture where our parents are like, so what do you want to be when you grow up, right? What do you want to do when you grow up? And you probably have a vision right now of what your life in the next decade or 20 years is going to look like. And you may also get a prompting. Remember, we started that. For those of you who've been with us for the whole series, you may get a prompting to move in a whole new direction or to take on a level of responsibility that you weren't really ever thinking about. Or maybe, it's a prompting to go and have that difficult conversation with someone. Or maybe it's a prompting to change your character and your heart and to be more loving and compassionate or generous or whatever it is. And if you've ever been in that space where you're thinking, no, I got a plan for my life and I really don't want you to mess it up, God, hang on, because you're not alone. In fact, some of the people who were used by God the most, stories we tell 3,000 years later, are people who had all kinds of objection to being the drama. They would much rather see the drama than be the drama. And here's what I want you to consider, okay? Listen, you can ignore God your entire life if you want. And the truth is, God can use someone else. If you decide, okay, I'm not in, then God could use someone else. But if you decide you're in, you get to do it. Like you get to be part of the story. So God could use someone else, but you get to do it. Like you actually get to do it. And that's exactly the situation that Moses was facing in Exodus chapter 3 or 4. Actually prior to Jesus, he was like the hero of the entire Old Testament, the Jewish Bible. And Moses was somebody who would rather see the drama than be the drama. We had talked already about, does failure disqualify me, writing God out of the script. And Moses, when he was when he was a young man, he actually committed murder, trying to be zealous, right? And so he was kind of like he's like, okay, well, God can't use me. And he was just tending sheep. It's like, I'm going to live a normal life. I'm going to tend sheep. And we pick up the story there at Exodus chapter 3, because Moses wasn't really interested in being in the drama, but God was very interested in having him in the drama. So one day, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. So he's just, he's at the garage, he's at the office, he's in the field, okay? Just doing his day job. And he had led the flock into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. But again, don't over-spiritualize this. This is just a normal day. It's like a Wednesday for him, okay? It's Thursday morning. This is what he's doing. And it's a normal day, but there, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. So he stared in amazement. He was trying to figure this out. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. And you got nothing better to do. He's got no iPhone, okay? So it's like, hey, wait a minute. I think it's supposed to be like burned up now. And it's not. It just keeps burning, but it's not getting burned up. And so he says, this is amazing, he says to himself. Why isn't that bush burning up? I've got to get a little closer. I got to go see it. When the Lord saw Moses coming closer to take a look, God called to him from the middle of the bush. Moses, Moses. So he's probably a little bit freaked out, as you would be, as I would be. But look at what he says. He says, here I am. Moses replied, and I don't know about you, but where in your life have you ever said to God, here I am? Maybe you're saying that for the first time in this series. You're like, yep, okay, here I am. I'm ready. I will obey the prompting. Here I am. Okay, God, you can use my life. Now, that's a very easy thing to say. It's a much harder thing to do. And what ensues over the next chapter and a half is Moses trying to come up with all the reasons why that's a really bad idea for God to use him. He's like, here I am. Yeah, it's kind of like that friend, like, oh, I'm sorry you're in a hard time. If there's anything I can do, well, we could use some meals. That would be really helpful. Yeah, let me know if there's anything I can do. Well, we could really use some food. Yeah, I know. Let me know if there's anything I can do. But anyway, I got to go, right? It's like, so Moses is kind of having one of those dialogues, like, here I am, use me, but not really. Yeah, here I am, I'm willing, but like, can you just let me get back to the sheep? Because I got to get them back by sunset, so... But then God lays this really big thing on Moses. And so Moses is set here in the story of a national drama, not that dissimilar from the global drama that we're in. So God's chosen people had fallen into slavery. They were under oppression, under a foreign king in Egypt. It felt like God had forgotten about his people. It felt like Egypt didn't care. And the people kind of barely remembered that they were God's people. And then God drops this on Moses, and he told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. So, and this is so powerful, I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. So he's dropping really big stuff on Moses. He's like, no, there's like a new narrative coming. There's a new reality coming. And I'm giving you a preview. And I'm going to take you out of Egypt, and I'm going to bring you into a land. He says it's a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. Look, he says, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. And now God drops this. He says, now go, for I'm sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. And at this point, Moses is probably going, no. Like I had that thing years ago where I killed the guy. No, that disqualifies me. And I'm tending the sheep. They have to be back by like sunset, and I'll get in trouble if they're not with my father-in-law. You know how that goes. And besides, I got plans for my life, okay? I've got this all figured out. What do you mean now go? Like you're going to do a big thing here? You're going to actually release your people from slavery, and you want me to do that? I mean, I had a plan for my life too. Like when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a baseball player. I remember telling my parents that. And then I realized later on, oh, you need athletic skills. So like that took me out of that. And then when I was 8, I wanted to be a lawyer. I came home and told my parents I want to be a lawyer. Now, I don't know what needs to be wrong with you when you're a kid to want to be a lawyer when you're 8 years old, but all that stuff was wrong with me. And then when I was 16, I walked into a radio station and I asked them to hire me. I talked about that earlier in this series, and they did. But I ended up at university and I did a degree in history, and then I did law, and then I ended up in seminary. I was a Christian, but felt a call into seminary, but didn't know what that meant and was trying to figure that out. And then it's like, life gets interrupted. And that's happening to Moses here. And maybe you got this picture of what your life is going to be like. Mine did not involve ministry. But you got this picture of what your life is going to be like, and then God shows up. And God says, well, I'm going to send you. I'm going to send you to her. I'm going to send you to him. I'm going to send you to them. Or in Moses' case, I'm going to send you to lead my people Israel out of Egypt. And then Moses does what you do and what I do. You start to protest. And he protests to God. Well, like, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Pharaoh's like the king of the superpower of the age. Like, who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? Like I'm not set up for that. So God answers him. This sounds familiar. It's exactly what God said to Joseph. I'll be with you. It's like, okay, but that sounds very like ambiguous. What does that mean? And God knew that, and he says, so this will be your sign that I'm the one who sent you. When you brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. And that's not bad, but it's like, well, wait a minute, I got to do it first, and then later you're going to show me it's the right thing. So Moses protests again, time 2. If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they're going to ask me, I've played this out in my mind, okay? They're going to ask me, what is his name? Because we don't even know what to call you, all right? And this is interesting. We can go into the whole history of the Old Testament, but like they called him kind of God, like just, okay, you're God, all right? I don't know. What's your name? What should I tell them? Now, this was interesting because according to people who study the scriptures and the Hebrew scriptures, this was also a power play, okay? This is Moses saying, if I can name this, then I have a little bit of control over that. And I'll give you the best example I know of in our world, all right? Some of you have had symptoms, but no diagnosis, right? You've had medical symptoms. It's like my stomach hurts all the time, or I got this fatigue, or I wonder if there's something growing in my brain or whatever that is, right? And you're like, do I have a tumor? Am I not well? And often, and I haven't been in that situation myself, but often the people I talk to say, it's better to find out it's cancer than to not know what it is. Now, what is behind that? And I'm not judging people one way or the other. I'm just saying, I've heard this many times. It's like, I was actually relieved, even though it was a bad diagnosis, I was relieved to get the diagnosis because not knowing was worse than knowing. So what is that? Well, what that is if you know, you have a little bit of power over it. Oh, if it's cancer, if we can name it, or, if it's some other disease and we can name it, then perhaps there's a treatment. And if there's a treatment, then I can get started. See, if you don't know, right, you've never been to a country, you've never heard it described, you're like, well, I don't know whether I really want to go there. Oh, it's like Iceland, only warmer. I just made that up. That makes no sense. But okay, but naming something gives you power over it, right? If you're looking at this food on your plate and you're like, what is this? You find out it's eggplant, then you're like, oh, I'm going to pass. No, but if it's like, oh, it tastes like chicken, then you're like, okay, I get it. So Moses is trying to probably get a little bit of power over God. And God says, okay, I'll give you my name. You want my name? I am who I am. It's like, what? If you've ever seen Jewish people or Christians spell out Yahweh, that is a transliteration of this. Or if you're reading from the old King James Version, the Lord, it's in all caps. That is this, okay? I am who I am. I am the Lord. In other words, you will not define me. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Now, people sometimes, just to jump ahead, fun tie-in here, will say, how do we know Jesus was God? Do you know how many times, going back to the original Greek, Jesus stands there and says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father. When people ask him, are you there? He says, I am. That is a direct reference back to this. In other words, Jesus is saying, yes, this is me. Okay, so anyway, I am who I am. You're not going to define me. So Moses is like, okay, guess you're God. And then God continues. He says, now go and call together all the elders of Israel and tell them, Yahweh, there it is, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has appeared to me, and the elders of Israel will accept your message. So he's being assured that they're going to listen. But I also know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. So I will raise my hand and strike the Egyptians, performing all kinds of miracles among them. In other words, this will not be easy, but you're up to it, and I'll be with you. And then at last he will let you go. So you would think that would be enough. Moses is like, nope. So Moses protested again. Well, what if they won't believe me or listen to me? You can almost see this, right? Like this is happening in a moment, but you can almost think, okay, I'm pretty sure God has told me to do this. You wake up the next day and you're like, well, wait a minute. What if they don't believe me? Well, wait a minute. I don't even know your name. Well, wait a minute. You have all these objections and he's going through them one by one. But he underneath this is this thing where like, I don't think I really want to do this. And so he says, so what if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say the Lord never appeared to you? What if they tell me I made this whole thing up? Yeah, I was by this bush, right? And this bush is on fire, but the bush doesn't really burn up. And then I heard this voice and he says, I'm going to release you. And it's like, well, we've been in slavery for 400 years. So what if they won't believe me? What if they say the Lord never appeared to you? So then the Lord asked him, what's that in your hand? Which is a fascinating question because often when we think about being in the drama rather than just seeing the drama, we think, well, I'm not rich, I'm not powerful, I'm not famous, I didn't go to seminary, God can't use me. You don't understand. And then God always says, well, what's that in your hand? Remember, Jesus did this too. It's like, we got all these people to feed. What do we have? Disciples come back, 5 loaves, 2 fishes, bring the boy to me. Jesus goes, that's enough. What do you got in your hand? Like God created you, right? And so what does Moses have in his hand? A staff, a shepherd's staff, tool of the trade. I got a wrench in my hand, okay? That's what I do. I just fix transmissions all day. I have a pen in my hand. I'm a writer, okay? That's what I do. I'm a lawyer. I have a keyboard. I have a laptop. I have a phone. I don't know, shepherd's staff? Throw it down on the ground, the Lord told him. So Moses threw down the staff. Turns into a snake. Moses jumps back. The Lord told him, reach out and grab its tail. So Moses reached out, he grabbed it, and then he turned it back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. So perform this sign, the Lord told him. Moses is like, okay, that was pretty cool. Like, that was neat. See, if you do this sign, then they will believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has really appeared to you. And then God kind of knew where this is going. He goes, it's still not going to be enough. So he goes, I'll tell you what, put your hand inside your cloak. So he does. He puts his hand inside his cloak. And when he took it out again, his hand was white as snow with a severe skin disease. Now put your hand back into your cloak, the Lord said. So Moses put his hand back in, and when he took it out, it was as healthy as the rest of his body. Now the Lord said to Moses, if they do not believe you, and if they are not convinced by the first miraculous sign, then they'll be convinced by the second. And if they don't believe or listen to you even after these 2 signs, then take some water from the Nile River and pour it out on the dry ground. When you do, the water from the Nile will turn to blood on the ground. It's like, okay. God's like, I gave you 3. You asked for 1, I gave you 3. Is Moses ready? No. Moses pleaded with the Lord. Oh, Lord, I'm not very good with words. Never have been, not now. And even though you've spoken to me, I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. So no. And then the Lord asked Moses, well, who makes a person's mouth and who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? I made your mouth. Now go, and I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. So you'd think at this point Moses is ready, but finally he shows his real hand. Moses again pleaded, Lord, please, send anyone else. Like I'm not in, okay? Like, yeah, those are good counters to my objections, but like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And if some of you are really honest, you don't want more God in your life. You're like, I had it all mapped out. No, send someone else. Now look at what God does. Then the Lord became angry with Moses. All right, he said, and you think he's going to let him off the hook. Nope. What about your brother, Aaron the Levite? I know he speaks well, and look, he's on his way to meet you, and he'll be delighted to see you. Now talk to him, put the words in his mouth, and I will be with both of you as you speak, and I will instruct you both in what to do. Aaron will be your spokesman to the people. He will be your mouthpiece, and you will stand in the place of God for him, telling him what to say. And take your shepherd's staff with you and use it to perform the miraculous signs I have shown you. And then look at the next verse. So Moses went. And that was the beginning of the story that we're still talking about today. The central event, the Exodus of the Jewish faith, one of the central stories of the Christian faith. Moses, who feels completely unprepared, who didn't want to do it, who didn't sign up for it, goes. And so for you, when it comes to the prompting, go. Do it. Do it. And yeah, it's more interesting to see the drama than to be the drama. It's scary. You're feeling like Moses. You're like, well, I've been praying about like making that phone call. I've been praying about switching jobs. I've been praying about what I feel called to do. I've been praying about starting this thing. I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons not to do this. And I get that, right? Moses got that. And a reluctant leader is the best leader. Now, why does it feel so much more interesting and much more compelling to see the drama than be the drama? It's safer, it's easier, it's less challenging. And it's also far less rewarding. So you gotta define success, and success isn't not failing. Success isn't staying in your own little corner and doing what's comfortable and doing what's nice, and I'm not gonna venture out very much, and I'm not gonna risk anything, okay? Success isn't not failing. And some of you, when you look at Moses' story, you're like, yeah, that's my story. And in fact, you've lost confidence in yourself. And I just want to say to you, like God said to Moses, if you've lost confidence in yourself, God still has confidence in you. You might say, well, I don't believe that. So I go back a few decades in my story and recommitted my life to Christ when I was in my early 20s. Went to law school because that's what I was going to do with my life. There, met the best thing that ever happened to me, my incredible wife, Tony. We're married for 30 years now, and we met in law school and have been through so much together. But we were both going to just be lawyers. That's what we were going to do, right? I was going to be a Christian lawyer and practice in Toronto, and I wanted to do constitutional law and litigation, had it all mapped out. Maybe I would teach. Maybe I'd go on to get my master's and teach at a law school. That was really interesting. And then I get this call into ministry, like vocational ministry. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? The first iteration of it happened when I was 24 years old. I was working at a law firm. It was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm standing at this desk. And I have a vision of myself. I was 24. I have a vision of myself at 44. And I'm a wildly successful lawyer, but morally I'm bankrupt inside. I've sold out on my values. I've lost my family. I have no self-respect. And it was just one of those things that I was wide awake. It flashed before my eyes and I'm like, oh. And as I sat down in my chair, after sort of having that moment, I thought, okay, like law is not for me. That's the only thing I knew in that moment. Law is not for me. And that happened at the law firm in my hometown. Right across, sort of way down the street, was the church I grew up in. And I went into the library of the firm, looked down the street, and I could see the church I grew up in. And I'm like, God, what does this mean? And the part of the church that I could see was the pastor's study. I knew the building well enough to know that those were the windows that were visible from the law firm. And I felt a prompting saying, you're supposed to be in there. Like, what, in the pastor's study in ministry? Are you kidding me? And I was just confused. And so I picked up my fiance, soon-to-be wife, after work. We were going back to my parents' place for dinner. And I picked her up and I didn't tell her a word about what had happened that afternoon in the office. And as we're driving back to my parents' place, she says to me, and I've known her almost a year, never talked about it. She goes, you ever think about going into ministry? I'm like, you'll never believe what just happened to me at the office today. And that started a conversation. And I told my parents about it and they could see it. I couldn't see it. I went to some counselors, asked them about it. They're like, oh yeah, we see it. I'm like, I don't see it. Like, I don't have the wiring to be a pastor. I'm wired to be a lawyer. I'm not a pastor. I don't hold people's hands. That's not like what I do. It took me 7 years to be reasonably confident in my calling. 7 years. Yeah, that's from when I was 24 to 31. And if you do the math, yeah, that was after I started ministry in this area and what would eventually become Connexus. Yeah, it was only after that first year and a half, 2 years. Because I thought, I don't have the gifts for ministry. I don't have the patience for ministry. I don't have the disposition. I thought, maybe I can go teach. Maybe I can do this. But all along the way, through the voices of very wise counsel, prayer, discernment, and so many stories, we could spend 2 more weeks talking about that. We went. I finished up law. Got called to the bar, resigned, went into seminary. Confused in seminary, heard about these 3 little churches north of Toronto and Oro of all places that were looking for a student pastor. Went up there, told you about that in part 1. We came here. I was only going to stay 18 months. I actually had a doctorate all worked out that I was going to go to in the US. And then that kind of fell apart. And 25 years later, we're here. And God has done so much more than we could ask or imagine. And God said go, and it has been to this point, such a radical departure from what I imagined for my own life. And we had no promise of what would happen. It could have been abject failure. But God said go, and we went. And as I've been reflecting on 25 years of ministry with you, it's kind of had a moment a couple of weeks ago where I got kind of just overwhelmed with gratitude. And I realized that this was the privilege. That God could have used someone else. But I got the privilege of doing this. That I got the opportunity to serve in this amazing congregation and to be part of it. And I never could have imagined what would have happened from those very small beginnings. I never could have imagined the relationships and the baptisms and the life change and the ups and the downs and everything else, but just this incredible gratitude. And so for my wife, Tony, and I, who I just adore, and I'm so grateful that we get to have moved through this season together and into the next season together, I just never could have imagined. So I just want to leave you with this last thought. Go, like Moses. Do what you're called to do. Obey the prompting. Little or big, you'll have 1,000 objections. Go. And down the road, you'll realize this. God could have used someone else, but you got to do it. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your calling. I thank you for your grace. I thank you in this series that you've maybe poked us and prodded us and made us uncomfortable. And we're reminded that our boldest moments are our best moments. Those moments where we're uncertain, we're nervous when we're picking up the phone, we're nervous when we're making the decision, we're nervous because we don't know. But you know. So give us the courage to go, whatever going looks like. To be the drama, to be in it rather than to just watch it. Father, for some people today, the drama is going to be surrendering their life to you. They're not even 100% sure you're real, but they've heard enough. And today they're making a decision to follow Jesus. Best decision I ever made in my life. Lord, I pray for anyone who's ready to make that decision right now. If that's you, would you pray this with me? Lord Jesus, today I come to you. I am a sinner. And I need a Savior. And I see what Jesus did. I see that you died and rose again for me to forgive my sins, and I embrace and accept that, and today I become a Christian. Today I decide to follow Jesus, and I ask you to be the Lord and the Savior of my life. Father, thank you for those who prayed that prayer. And God, I just want to thank you so much for this church. Thank you so much for this team. Thank you so much for your grace. And I pray you'd give us all the courage to do what you're calling us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.